where we'll be exploring Swift River by Essie Chambers.
Yeah.
It's a novel that takes us back to a time when a peaceful valley in Massachusetts was forever changed. Imagine your hometown, a place filled with generations of memories, vanishing beneath millions of gallons of water.
Wow.
That's the reality for the characters in Swift River.
What's so captivating about this book is how it intertwines fiction with a real historical event.
Right.
The creation of the Quabbin Reservoir. To provide water for Boston's growing population, the state flooded the Swift River Valley, displacing entire communities, erasing a landscape rich in history.
It's almost like the valley itself becomes a character.
Right.
And Chambers really paints this vivid picture of this lost world. She describes the Swift River Valley as this untouched paradise. Rolling hills, fertile farmlands, a community so close-knit they practically breathe as one. You can almost feel the sun on your skin and hear the laughter of children playing in the fields.
Exactly. And that connection to the land is central to the story. For generations, the residents of the valley built their lives around farming and the natural rhythms of the seasons. Their sense of identity, their traditions, even their concept of time is deeply rooted in this place.
Which makes it even more devastating when the government announces its plan to flood the valley. You know, on one hand, you can see the logic: Boston needs water, and the Quabbin Reservoir offers a solution. But on the other hand, can you imagine the shock and disbelief of the people who called the valley home?
It's a stark example of how progress can come at a steep human cost. Chambers doesn't shy away from this complexity. She introduces us to Addie, a young girl whose perspective really brings this conflict to life.
I was particularly struck by Addie's character. Through her eyes, we experience the loss of the valley with such raw emotion. She's trying to make sense of why her world, her everything is being washed away. It forces you to confront the ethical dilemma at the heart of the story. Is it ever truly okay to sacrifice one community's way of life for the benefit of another?
That's the central question Chambers explores. And it's a question that resonates far beyond the specific context of the Quabbin Reservoir.
Right.
It makes us consider the trade-offs inherent in any large-scale development project. What are the long-term consequences, both intended and unintended? Who benefits and who bears the burden?
Those are questions we grapple with even today.
Right.
But in the face of this impending loss, something remarkable happens in the story. The residents of the Swift River Valley turn to their memories as a form of resistance.
As the valley's fate becomes clear, memories take on a new significance. For Addie, it's the simple, everyday moments that stand out. Playing in the fields, listening to her grandmother's stories, the unique personalities of the valley's residents. These memories become a way for her to hold on to her identity, to preserve what's most precious to her as her physical world disappears.
It's as if those memories become anchors in a sea of change, tethering her to who she is and where she comes from. And this focus on memory isn't just individual, it becomes a communal act of resistance.
Exactly. The residents of the Swift River Valley embark on a collective effort to document their history. They photograph their homes and landscapes, record oral histories, and carefully preserve artifacts.
It's almost an act of defiance, wouldn't you say? A refusal to allow their community to be completely erased, even if it vanishes beneath the water. It made me think about the importance of preserving our own personal and family histories. What stories, what places, what objects hold meaning for us? How do we ensure that they are not forgotten?
It's a powerful reminder that our past shapes who we are, both individually and collectively. And the act of remembering, of preserving those stories and traditions, is an act of reclaiming agency in the face of loss.
So while the government might be able to physically flood the valley, they can't extinguish the spirit of the people who live there. Their stories, their memories, their very essence will live on. And speaking of that spirit, one of the things that struck me about Swift River is how Chambers portrays the resilience of the community. Even in the face of this immense upheaval, they find ways to support each other.
It's truly remarkable. They share their grief, help each other relocate, and form new support networks. There's this underlying current of, we may be losing our homes, but we're not losing each other.
It really underscores the idea that home isn't just a physical place, but also a network of relationships.
Right.
Have you ever experienced a move or even just a major life change where that sense of community became even more important?
Absolutely. It speaks to a fundamental human need for connection and belonging. And in Swift River, we see how these bonds forged over generations in the valley become a lifeline for the residents as they navigate this incredibly difficult transition. They draw strength from each other, knowing that they're facing this challenge together.
And that's where Chambers brings us back to Addie. Remember, she's grappling with this huge abstract concept of progress while also trying to understand what home really means. It's a question we all wrestle with at some point in our lives, isn't it?
What's fascinating is how Addie's understanding of home evolves throughout the story. At first, it's purely a physical place, the valley itself. But as she's forced to leave, she starts to realize that home is also about the people she loves, the memories she carries, and the essence of the life she lived there.
So it becomes less about a location and more about a feeling, a connection.
Exactly. And that realization allows Addie to find a sense of peace and belonging, even though her world has been turned upside down. It speaks to the adaptability of the human spirit, our ability to carry the essence of home within us wherever we go. It made me think about those touchstones in our own lives, those things that evoke a sense of home no matter where we are physically.
You know, like a familiar scent, a song, a photo that instantly transports you back to a specific time and place. Those anchors that ground us even when everything else feels uncertain.
Precisely. And for Addie, the Swift River Valley becomes woven into her very being. Even though she can't physically return to it, its essence remains with her, shaping her identity and influencing how he navigates the world.
It's almost as though the valley becomes a source of strength, a reminder of where she comes from and who she is at her core.
And that connection to the past becomes a powerful force in her life, allowing her to find meaning and purpose, even in the face of profound loss.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? That even when we experience loss, we can still find ways to keep the spirit of what we've lost alive within us. It makes you think about those places and experiences that have shaped your own life.
Yeah.
What would you carry with you if you had to leave everything behind?
It's a question worth pondering. And Swift River reminds us that those intangible connections to people, to places, to memories are often the most enduring. They shape who we are and provide a sense of continuity even as the world around us changes.
So if we step back and look at Swift River as a whole, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from Addie's journey and the story of this lost valley?
Well, I think Chambers offers us a nuanced perspective on the complexities of progress. She doesn't present a simple right or wrong answer, but rather invites us to consider the human cost of development.
Right.
And to question whether the needs of the many always justify the sacrifices of the few.
It's a call for empathy, really, to remember that behind every large-scale project, there are individual stories, families, and communities whose lives are irrevocably altered. And to acknowledge that progress often comes with a sense of loss, even if it ultimately leads to a greater good.
Exactly. And alongside that, Chambers highlights the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. She shows us how even in the face of profound loss, people find ways to adapt, to rebuild, and to create new meanings of home.
Yeah.
The residents of the Swift River Valley might have lost their physical homes, but they didn't lose their sense of community, their memories, or their determination to carry their heritage forward.
It's a story that stays with you, that makes you think about your own life and the things you hold dear. What stories are important for you to preserve? What places hold a special meaning in your heart? And how can you ensure that those memories, those connections, are passed on to future generations? Swift River reminds us that our stories, like the places we call home, are what make us who we are.
I highly recommend Swift River to anyone who's ever felt the pull of home, the weight of history, or the bittersweet sting of change. It's a beautifully written and thought-provoking exploration of what it means to belong, to remember, and to find resilience in the face of loss.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Swift River. Hopefully it sparked some reflection on your own experiences and maybe even inspired you to pick up a copy of the book. Until next time, keep exploring.